Well, good evening or good afternoon, whenever you're watching this program, and welcome to another exciting episode of Porch Talk. I, of course, am Paul W. Marino, and my compadre here to my left and your right is the one and only Eugene Michaelenko.
You got it.
It's
Pleased
an
to be
honest
here.
mistake. George is a lot easier to remember than Eugene.
Right. Some people have an easy time remembering Eugene because it's different, it's not John or Billy.
Well, how often did your father call you George? Eugene.
He didn't call me very often.
Yeah. Well, Joanne, would you please put the photo in front of us? Oh, that's making the audience happy.
Ta-da.
So, the question tonight is, where was this photo taken? You can be generally specific, as in which town, or you can be extremely specific as to where in that town this took place. As you can see, this is balloon launching. Excuse me. Balloon launching. So if you have an idea that you think is correct, please give us a call at 664-4408. If you have a wild guess, please give us a call at 664-4408. If you're ticked off at listening to us every 2 weeks, well, actually it's every week because this show will go on next week too.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so if you're sick and tired of hearing our voices, give us a call at 664-4408. We won't necessarily go away, but we'll be happy to hear from you.
Is that a gas house in the middle there?
Yes, it is.
Okay. When they used to make gas in North Adams.
Thank you.
Oops. Sorry.
Oh, oops. All right, Joanne, you can put us in front again. No, I won't make that offer. Eugene forgot to bring his photos tonight. So I'm going to start with one of my news stories. I've got 3 news stories posted on my website, and this one is titled Damnation, and I do feel the need to warn you that it does employ the N-word. It is not used gratuitously. It is essential to the character of the protagonist, which I think you will agree. And I apologize in advance to anyone who is offended by its use. If there was anything about himself that Charles Morgan took pride in, it was his sense of justice. He was a fair man who considered any other man he met to be as good and worthy as himself, unless the other was a nigger, a sinner, or white trash. He lived a good life and a worthy one. He'd been a good citizen and a good Christian. He went to church every Sunday, plus prayer meetings and revivals. He prayed over his meals, before bed, and prior to every important decision. Even on his deathbed, he had prayed, asking his Maker to remember how he had walked with him throughout his life and what a godly life he had lived. So it was with great chagrin and horror that, having breathed his last in the sure knowledge that he would soon be with God, he suddenly found himself suspended over a seemingly bottomless pit. Whether it was truly bottomless or not, it was certainly broad, a good 50 feet across. He was suspended over the very center and could imagine no way of getting to the edge. Even if he could swing himself to one side or another, He was too high to touch the ground. Not that he figured this out all at once, for he did not. The first thing that captured his attention was the matter of his suspension. Just a moment here. There we go. The matter of his suspension. A thick, raspy rope was cinched tight around his neck, made tighter by the full drag of his 200 pounds. The rope dug its stiff fibers into his skin, chafing him as it cut off his breath. His hands and feet were free, but he didn't seem able to touch the rope, much less loosen it. He gasped and choked, straining just to breathe and wondering how long he would hang there. 5 to 7 minutes, he seemed to recall. He'd participated in plenty of hangings, lynchings really, and unless someone interfered, there were numerous ways to prolong the agony. It took the perpetrator 5 to 7 minutes to die, a slow, brutal 5 to 7 minutes, unless they wanted the fun to last longer. But even when he calculated that he'd been hanging several times more than 5 to 7 minutes, he was still choking and gasping, his neck still chafed from the cruel, prickly rope, his tongue still thrust from his mouth, seeking air and moisture, his eyes still bulged in shock. His fingers continued to flex convulsively. A roaring continued to fill his ears, and everything that his eyes saw, he saw with a terrible clarity. When he'd been dangling long enough to get over his initial shock, which took long enough and then some, he began to notice where he was hanging, where and how hopeless his position was. He began to observe the pit that he hung over. 1,000 thoughts and calculations forced themselves through his pain and despair. And it was not too much longer that he realized where he was. He was in hell, hanging from a coarse noose over a broad pit with no discernible bottom, choking forever. It had to be hell. Oddly, in the midst of his suffering and torture, he felt content. Indeed, he could feel nothing else. After all, he was a good Christian, a man of prayer and faith. He trusted God, and if God had decided he belonged in hell, then he belonged in hell. He did not understand why God had chosen to punish him, but he was not one to question divine justice. Such justice could only be borne, and he would bear it. But there was one thing he could not stand. Just one thing that could not have been divine. It was more hellish, more ungodly, more vile, more inhuman than anything imaginable. The noose held his head at a strange angle, one that tilted his eyes upward. When he deliberately raised his eyes, they saw with such clarity. But what they saw! He could not see where the rope led to. For some reason, it rose up and faded from view, as if where it went did not matter. But above that, far, far above, far, far away, he could see heaven, as clearly as if it was at the edge of his pit. He could see God, exactly as he had pictured him as he prayed. That one view alone would have confirmed his faith 1,000 times over. But who was that with him? Charles Morgan had helped to hang 50 people. 30 of them had been niggers. Of them, some had been guilty of something or other, accused of rape or theft. 1 or 2 had actually been guilty. The others, Well, they were just niggers, and niggers wanted hanging. It was what they were for. The remaining 20 had been white, mostly. Like the 10 niggers who'd been accused of something, most of the 20 whites had been tracked down and strung up to punish them for their crimes. Sure, it turned out later that some of them had been innocent, but big deal. They'd done something worth hanging them for. Most men had at one time or another. A few had been heathens. One had been a woman, a whore. Some were nigger lovers. The world was better off without them. He'd assisted in most of the hangings, on occasion putting the noose on them himself, or kicking away the block the perp stood on. A lot of times, he'd just stood in the crowd and joined in the shouting and laughter, enjoying the hell out of wiping those sinners off the face of the earth and sending them straight to hell where they belonged. Or had he? From his particular corner of hell, he could see clear to heaven. He could see God. And around him, breaking bread and drinking wine, kneeling before the deity to be blessed and forgiven their sins, all 50 of the evil, wicked sinners he'd slaughtered in the name of God. They were in heaven. They were with God. They hadn't even been godly people. And he, Charles Morgan, one of the godliest men he knew, he was in hell. That he could not abide. That one decision made by God Almighty, the source of all goodness and all justice, that was the one point of divine justice that Charles Morgan could never tolerate, never accept, never believe in.
Oh, I'm glad there's justice and somebody got their just desserts.
Oh, yes.
What inspired this story? Were you
Well,
came across some ugly
I've been
lynching story?
I've been having this idea for a long time, and it finally clicked.
Mm-hmm. Lynching is a horrible thing. It's only been made illegal like a few years ago, hasn't it?
I think so.
That it existed for so long, and I don't know how many people died at the hands of lynchers in this country.
Yeah, but of course this guy thinks he was perfectly okay in doing that.
Yeah.
They were sinners. If they weren't sinners, they were N-words. And they wanted hanging. It's what they're for.
Where did you get that from? Has that ever been expressed?
Well, it seemed a way to justify his thinking. Although the thing about any man being good as any other man as long as he wasn't an N-word, I got that from Harry Truman.
Oh, really?
I recall reading some years ago that before he married Bess, he wrote her a letter in which he said, among other things, that he believed any man was as good as any other man as long as he wasn't an N-word or something else. And I forget what the other thing was.
But it was Harry Truman who integrated the Army, wasn't he?
That's right.
So he repented and changed his ways?
Yes, he did.
Oh, good to hear. Redemption.
So, shall we talk about the weather?
Let's talk about cold weather and storms.
Cold
so everyone
weather.
likes to talk about, that's what we're supposed to talk on the porch, about the weather. Boy, is it hot out. Boy,
No,
is it
we're
cold
sitting out on the porch. It's freezing out here. Why aren't we inside in front of a fire?
Well, don't you remember any old snowstorms, big snowstorms that left an impression on you?
Well, yeah, when my mother and I, well, after my father died, my mother and I started going to the Be Our Guest Christmas dinners. at the American Legion.
Uh-huh.
And I was doing deliveries, and I remember we had a blizzard one day, and I got stuck down on Fairgrounds Avenue.
Oh. I remember a storm. It was, I think, 1969. I think I was like in 8th grade. And I remember going outside, and the street that I lived on is almost like a wind tunnel. And it seemed like all the snow had blown up into, in front of my father's print shop. And there's a little overhang that had to be maybe, I don't know, 8 feet high. And the drifts had come within like a foot of that were there that high up. And then I walked out on the street, and I noticed the streets weren't plowed, and that there were these huge drifts across Pine Street down in Renfrew. And I just thought, oh my God, we're trapped. There's no. But somehow the plows came and pushed the snow away.
Well, when my nephew Stephen was little, he liked a book titled Katie and the Big Snow. You familiar with it?
Not at all.
Well, Katie is a truck, very big truck, and she drives around all summer, in use. But in the winter, she spends the winter in the garage because she's too big for snow plowing. Hey, it's a children's story. What do you want?
And it's a girl truck, too, a female truck. I like it.
Yes, well, so one day it starts snowing, and the snow gets a few feet deep, and the plows start out, and one by one the plows all get stuck, and the snow gets up to the first floor windows, it gets up to the second floor windows, and then it stops. And Katie has to come out and start plowing the streets, and she gets the other trucks free so they can clean up the small stuff while she goes around and does the main plowing.
Oh. It brought to mind something about another storm, but now I can't remember what it was. I know what it was. In 1920, the snow was so deep, and the trolley cars
And you
couldn't
were
move.
just a wee little lad at the time.
I wasn't a twinkle in anybody's eye, and the trolley cars couldn't run, so people couldn't get to work. So the Adams and North Adams was crippled, and the Chamber of Commerce went out and put posters up and asked people to come with shovels to shovel out the trolley car tracks. And men actually came down and spent the time to dig out the tracks so that the trolleys could pass through. So I thought that was pretty funny. Now, if you look, it's the Green Bay Packers right now. They're the Buffalo Bills. They're asking people, their fans, to come and shovel out their stadium so that they can play on Sunday. That their stadium is filled with snow.
Well, when the Mohawk Trail, the modern Mohawk Trail, was first built, in the winter everyone had a section of road they were responsible for shoveling. So people who lived on the trail had to go out and
clear
shovel
the road?
it. Yeah.
Wow.
And somewhere I have a photo of a line of cars driving over the trail, and the snow is right up to the level of the roof on either side.
We have pictures of that up on Stafford Hill, of that, and in Cheshire, the snow that high.
And then, of course, there was, the blizzard of 1888.
Yes, you have any stories of that? I have.
Oh, yes, I have. I have a photo taken on Eagle Street, where the sidewalk is clear and the snow on the street is up to there.
Right.
but out in the Midwest, it was called the White Death. A cowboy would freeze to death on his horse, and neither one would fall over until the thaw in the spring.
Oh, it took out till spring. There was one death in Adams. A man walking back from, I forgot where, but he was within like 100 feet of his house, and they found him there frozen dead, up in Sigsville, somewhere up a Quaker Street somewhere. So, quite the story.
Yes, indeed.
And how about cold spells? I remember there was a cold spell. It was in January. I think I was in high school at the time, so that'd be in the 70s, and it would be like 20 below, and it went on for several days. And I remember, no, it had to be even around Christmas time too, because people were going to Christmas mass, and they couldn't start their cars. So there was always that trouble there. Oh my God, we can't get to church because the cars won't start. And then I met someone from the Berkshire Gas Company who worked there at the time, and he said he was commissioned and told to set up a rationing system. They were running out of gas, and that who were they going to decide who would get heat and who wouldn't get heat. So it was that critical at that time. But
Well, hopefully enough people had fireplaces.
not in the 70s. I don't think so. Look at the people in Tennessee. Tennessee right now is suffering under 9 inches of snow, sub-zero weather. Not that they don't deserve it, but that they definitely are having a real winter down there.
Well, I remember one winter, I used to play trumpet when I was in school, and my father came downstairs and found me practicing my trumpet in front of a roaring fire. And boy, was he ticked off. We didn't have a fireplace. Hey, that's better than the one about the wood stove.
Right.
Yeah, well, we got a wood stove once, nearly burned the house down, and the fireman came and told us that we had to get rid of that and get a stove made of metal and burn wood inside it. Well, you'd think they would have told us that at the store.
There was an exhibit at Mass Voca where they had a wood stove made out of wood.
And I don't even want to talk about the coal stove.
You have no other memories of winter storms.
Well, as I was saying before the show, I remember walking through my yard as a kid, and the snow was up to my waist. And of course, it's partly because of the changes in temperature, you know, and partly that my waist is a good deal higher now.
Right. I also remember the wind whipping. I lived in an old house, and on the first floor there were big windows. They were like maybe 4 feet or so wide, and the wind would hit them, and they would rattle. So it would be a time when the wind would come through, and you'd hear this of the wind rattling the windows. Can't do that now with vinyl windows and all that stuff.
That's true. I remember, well, I don't have it anymore. My mother made me toss it. But we had a big scoop in the garage that my father had made. And the thing was, at the time, he and later Ralph, my brother Ralph, were clearing the yard by hand. So they'd go out and fill this scoop and bring it over to the hedge, dump it there, and then shovel it over the hedge onto the lawn.
This past snowstorm, I drove down the street where my shop is, and somebody went and just like pushed the snow out into the road, which I know is illegal, but They must have came back later because it was definitely gone, or maybe the plow took it away. But I was surprised. And anyhow, I noticed, well, they had no place to put the snow. There was no place in their driveway. The house was on one side, there was a house on the other side, and there was no place where they could move the snow to.
Yeah, where you're supposed to put it.
And they had, I think they had like 3 cars in their driveway, so there was no place, you know, no place to put a pile. But in front of my house, there was a huge, like, open space that we had for parking, but we would pile these big snow piles, and then after the snow piles would stay there for a while, we could dig tunnels in them, which I don't think is very
Yeah,
safe.
my brother Mark used to do that.
Is he still with us?
Yes, he is.
But we used to dig tunnels. It was great. We had, and the snow was hard enough to get through them. So.
Yeah, as I say, Mark used to do it, but it felt too much like work to me.
But wasn't it fun once you had a little tunnel you could crawl through?
Oh, yes. And then we got rid of the hedge, and my father started hiring people to plow. And we would have a huge pile up on the lawn that looked like a mountain. And I remember watching my cat climb up that, and he must have felt like he was climbing a mountain.
Well, that was the other fun thing too. You'd climb these mountains of snow, and you'd have wrestling matches pushing people off, and someone trying to come up and take the king of the hill, and you pushed them off. And you could always fall and not worry about hitting your head because you fall in soft snow. And
yeah, and of course we used to go sledding.
Right. On a sled or like on a coaster or regular sleds or?
I still have the sled that we used to ride. It's a genuine antique.
A rainbow racer, or what do they call them? Red racers?
Yeah,
No, that
something
was a
like
wagon,
that.
yeah. Maybe that's a wagon, the red racer.
And I also have a couple of jumpers.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever
the
tried to
jack
ride one of
jumpers.
those? Yeah.
I think I must have once. And of course, the older ones, it had something like a ski with a metal bar on the bottom.
Right.
And I have a photo of my mother sitting on one, but I also have one made especially for small children because it's got 2 skids underneath it.
Training wheels. You ever hear of rippers?
Rippers, no.
They're sort of like toboggans that are long, and they would put about 4 kids could be on at one time, and it was basically a plank with some runners, and someone in front could steer it. But I know people still alive who remember driving, going down the hill on a ripper. And in those days too, they used to have streets designated just for to slide on. So there were no cars, or the cars wouldn't go there. Or at least you would think they wouldn't go there, but.
Well, I find that very, very interesting because there was something that happened in North Adams, I think it was in the 90s. A group of kids were sledding in the street. They had already been told by the police not to. And well, tragedy struck. They were sliding down the street, and a truck with a plow on it turned onto the street, couldn't see them, snagged one of them on the plow, and dragged him something like 30 feet before he realized anything was wrong. And the father sued the city, sued the driver, sued the company that owned the truck, and sued the police. And
did he win? Did he get a settlement?
I don't know, but what I do remember is he got a lot of angry feedback for blaming those people. And someone wrote a letter to the transcript. Oh, he's just trying to recoup some of the medical costs that are going to be heaping up over the years. And I wrote a response to that. It's not a question of the medical bills, it's a question of who's responsible. The company, just because they own the truck, the driver, because he couldn't see them. He would have pulled to the intersection, stopped and looked, didn't see anything, pulled out. Is he responsible? If my parents, if the police had told my brother and me not to sled in the street anymore, we would not have sledded in the street anymore, because our father would have made sure we didn't do that, either by taking the sled away or by giving us a beating.
But the strategy of all these lawsuits are sue as many people as you can, and one of them may win. So you got to take whatever shot you can.
It's also so that they'll settle out of court.
Right.
When we first moved into Building 6 in Heritage State Park, there was a ramp going from the front door down to the level of the restrooms and the other big room down there. And that was being worked on. And a guy came in checking for the alarms. Now, there was a couple of buckets with a board across blocking the way into there. And, looking up at the ceiling, he stepped around it, walked down the slope, and then he stepped off. It was maybe 18 inches, and he stumbled against a wall. No, wasn't hurt. Don't worry about it. A few months later, he lost his job. Next thing you know, he is suing us, that is NBCTC, he's suing the city and the body that was overseeing rent on the place, which is a city organization. His claim was that the injuries he sustained in that stumbling fall were preventing him from fulfilling his conjugal duties.
Oh.
His wife sued all three organizations for the same reason. And his children sued all three organizations for the same reason.
Did they get away with it?
Yeah, because it was settled out of court.
Oh.
You can go to court and get him reamed out by a judge, but that's way expensive.
Mm-hmm. But now I don't know if they still sled. Would you have a sliding place in North Adams? In Adams, we have it at the Forest Park Country Club, hill number 4, I think. Is there a place at North Adams where you can slide?
There's probably a couple places in North Adams.
They are right now. Hey, we'll go sliding.
I recall hearing that they were sledding on the hill beneath Brayton School and the Y.
Oh, right, yeah.
And when I was a kid, we used to go up on the sandbank behind our house, and we'd slide there.
Sandbank, yeah.
Yeah, well, when you're driving on River Street and you see that big, bulky block of sand and a hill up beyond that looks like, it looks to me anyway, like a a volcano, we would sled behind that line. So it was a gentle slope, but if you went down head first on your sled, you could break your wrist like my brother did.
I like the idea of sledding on streets. You know, if they close the streets off and all that, because that's so easy, and so many good hills around here. But it's perfect for an easy run.
My section of Vesey Street would be good.
Yeah.
If they blocked off the street
North Street,
where it meets School Street.
Vesey School.
Because shortly after that, it gets a whole lot steeper and zips out onto River Street.
How about ice skating? Did you ice skate?
I tried it, didn't like it.
Well, were there ice skating rinks in North Adams, outside ones? Because I know Cheshire's got like 2 of them. Have you seen they've built out of polyethylene? I saw that they filled them with water. They must be frozen finally by now. They're useful. One of them is behind, just in front of the old school, and I forget where the other one is. I know I've seen them, but I can't think of where they are now.
The only place that I remember there being an outdoor rink was at the bottom of Tyler Street. There was a playground there, and they would pour water there, and they had an ice rink. And I remember seeing an African-American man playing with the kids there. You know, they're trying to get him to skate, and he gets up and wah!
Falls down.
And then all the kids rush in to help him get up.
When I was a Boy Scout, we were camping up on Windsor Lake in Windsor, Plainfield. And to get across the lake to go to where we were camping, we had to cross the lake, and it was all sheer ice, and it was all smooth. So you had no traction whatsoever. And then we'd all be walking, and boom, if someone would fall. Get up, walk a little bit further, boom, you'd fall again. It was hilarious, and we didn't get hurt. I was surprised we didn't break any legs or anything, or elbows.
Or fall through the ice.
No, it was too cold for that. The ice was thick enough. So.
Well, you know, that reminds me of something I saw in my college physics book. The book was wonderful. It illustrated things in a very understandable way. You are out in the middle of a lake. It's frozen over, and the ice is 100% friction-free, which means if you start to walk, you're going to be walking in place. How do you get off the lake?
I think you have to crawl. You have to swim.
No. You take off a shoe and throw it away from you as hard as you can. And what that will do is, well, it's the principle of rocketry. You throw the shoe that way, you are going to move that way. And well, of course, you're impeded by the air. So once you run out of speed, you take off your other shoe, throw that away as hard as you can, and you'll move toward the shore. And presumably, if you had enough things to throw away, you could get to the shore. Well, then to take that to rocketry, if you're in a rocket and you had enough shoes and you could throw them out the bottom fast enough, the rocket would take off. And it's illustrated by a cutaway of a rocket, and these 2 guys are throwing shoes out of the bottom as fast as they can. And
this is in a college physics.
Yes.
Okay. There used to be ice skating rinks in Adams at all the playgrounds, at Beaufield, at Renfrew, at Russell. And the transcript the transcript office was on Central Street in Adams, and they used to post in their windows of which fields were where you could skate, where skating was open and clear. So you'd go by and say, oh, it's Beaufield has got skating today, or Russell Field is skating today. But
were the rinks in pools?
no, they laid down a rim of sod of dirt, of mounds of dirt, and then they would fill it with water. I'm not sure how if they had the fire department come and empty out a fire hydrant or what, but.
Yeah, because I remember there were playgrounds at the major schools, the major neighborhood schools, Freeman, Brayton, Houghton, and Johnson. And they had people there in the summer supervising so kids could go there
They were
and play.
wading pools. How deep were they? Were they 3 feet,
I
2
would
feet?
say maybe a foot,
Yeah.
maybe a foot and a half. And I remember watching the guy going over to fill the pool one summer, and he opened this big door, and it looked like he was reaching way, way down. And of course, it couldn't have been more than a foot deep. But yeah, they'd fill that, and little kids would go in.
They had them in Adams too, but they were made out of this really rough concrete. So if you went in there without shoes on, it was like you could wreck your feet. I remember it was and now I think they're all taken down because I bet you there's liability. People were getting hurt, crash, sliding. So, and now they have those, what do they have over at Knoll Field where the water just sprays down, little showers and...
I haven't seen that, but yeah, that makes
There's
sense.
one over at Knoll Field. I've seen kids in the summertime playing there. But those pools, I know there used to be even one at Little League Field, and I think there was one at, no, there's still no Little League in Russell. I mean, in Renfrew Field, but they're gone now. Same with slides. Are there still slides around? I think slides are. I think they're really it.
No, I don't think so.
Because they're
Fish Pond
dangerous,
used
too.
to have 2 floats, and one with a ladder so you could go up and dive off the tower. Those are gone now. Liability.
Someone must have sued somebody. There was a lawsuit involved.
Yeah. And hey, we're still waiting to hear from one of the 2 of you out there. If you want to take a guess as to where the photo was, Joanne, photo. Thank you, Joanne. If you want to guess as to where this photo was taken in Adams, North Adams, or Williamstown, or Cheshire, or Clarksburg for that matter, and where in the town it was, please give us a call at 664-4408. And I'll tell you quite frankly, I'm getting sick to death of hearing just the 2 of our voices here. So please give us a call. Please, please. What number should they call?
664-4408.
Yes, yeah.
Look, in the middle balloon right there already says, can you see that far away?
Yes, it says Adams.
Right. So could that be South Adams?
Hey, it's possible. We still have little under 10 minutes for you to call in and guess. Please call in and guess. Please, please.
Don't beg, don't beg.
Oh, sorry. Call in. Yeah, I'll do it the Marine way.
They're pretty nice balloons. I like the one with the little like a diamonds or so, diamond pattern on it. But now they're so decorative too. Now they're all those wild colors.
What that diamond pattern is that's a net.
Yeah.
That's
Holding the gas.
Yeah.
And I thought ballooning requires a certain atmosphere of the temperature, where it's not too windy, not too cold, not too hot.
To tell the truth, I don't know, but I do know that the summer that I worked at Old Castle Theater Company, the set designer was a student at Bennington College, and one of his teachers there was a balloonist, and we helped him get his balloon ready for air. And what he did was he rolled it out and spread it out, and then started up a motorized fan that just blew air into it until there was enough air. Then he fired up the flame that would heat the air, and whoop.
Amazing, just amazing what they can do.
Yes, indeed. So, Joanne, we're feeling kind of lonely. Yes, there we are. I'm sorry to disappoint the two of you that are watching who would rather look at the photo than us, but hey, it's your own fault for not calling in. And what number are they not calling in?
664-4408.
Oh, well done!
Oh, high five. Stop crying.
I do that with little kids too.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, they just, They like that.
Yeah.
Little kids also like to see me cry because I dab my eyes with my
I
beard.
wish I could do that.
Well, let it
Someday.
grow longer.
I don't shave it. I don't cut it. It just gets kinkier. It just curls up. It probably could be longer, but see,
Yeah,
it
well,
flashes back.
I remember one time walking down Main Street and saw a guy sitting there. He had hair down halfway down his back, and he had a full beard down to here.
Oh, they have Guinness Book of World Records of people who had the longest beard and the longest hair and all that. Too much to care for, boy.
Well, I recall hearing that Crystal Gale was planning on cutting her hair. She has hair literally down to the floor.
Really?
Yes. And she was thinking about cutting it, and her daughters said, "No, you can't. That's you."
To be associated with your hair.
Well, I remember my first girlfriend. She had gorgeous blonde hair that grew halfway down her back. Pity none of it was on her head.
Back hair.
All right, so we have about 9 minutes. Shall we give the secret away early?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
All right, Joanne, put it in front of us again. Thank you. And our two viewers, thank you too. This is, of course, the balloon launching at the North Adams Gas Company, which was where where Massachusetts Electric is now.
Oh, this isn't the fairgrounds? This is actually off
No,
of Brown
no,
Street?
this is at the gas works, and this is where they were filled because that's the gas that they were using.
Wow.
Now, when the Historical Society moved into 5A in Heritage State Park, they had an exhibit in which they had balloons being launched, and it was right next to the fairgrounds exhibit. And that was very misleading because while the fairground is near the gas works,
Down the river.
it's near in the same sense that South Adams is near North Adams.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So, yeah, it was further down the river. And they did not launch from the fairgrounds as you might expect. They launched from the gas works where the gas was produced. Now, you pointed out the compressor house, and look to its left, and you'll see a compression tank.
oh, yeah.
I remember two of those tanks. The compressor house itself was gone before my time.
Yeah, one of those tanks was on Ashland Street, because in Adams they were on Mill Street. There were two of them on Mill Street, next to the river. And I guess the gas works used to be across the river, where the Columbia Memorial Park is. In fact, when they were tore down the Mass Electric substation that was there, the electric company had to do remediation because of material that was left behind by the gas company from them making gas. I think there's arsenic and I forgot what else was in the ground for making gas. But gas was a big improvement. I mean, it lit your home, it lit the streets at one time.
Oh, yes.
So, just as
Did your cooking.
that still does your cooking, but
And if you were in a balloon that caught on fire, you went,
yeah. Well, that's the thrill of it. That's the excitement of it.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah.
life-threatening.
and interestingly enough, have you ever been in one of those compressor houses?
No.
What is in there is essentially what's in the compression tank. It's got a rubber or something like rubber bag in there that as it fills up,
It compresses the gas.
yeah, it fills the whole building. And then when they drain it out,
Well, I remember those big tanks. They had different levels. They would raise and lower them. So that must be to compress the gas. Okay. And now everything is piped from the Tennessee
Yes.
pipeline. Is that? It's probably safer that way. Now, North Adams was this looks like it was taken around the 1890s, maybe
yes,
the turn
that's
of the century.
correct.
And that's when North Adams was somewhat of, you called it before, the balloon capital of the world. Is that
Yes.
what
Now,
North Adams
I have
called it?
heard that. I don't remember if it's a documented source, but
There's a balloon story in Adams in the 1920s. There was a balloon race starting in Cleveland, Ohio, and I think it was supposed to end in Boston. And the balloon came over Mount Greylock, and something went wrong, and there were two men in the balloons. The balloon was descending out of control. One man had to jump out because he thought he could save it, and that the guy could continue with the race on his own. But then that guy also, not very much farther, lost control of the balloon, and the balloon crashed off of somewhere around what's now, what is that, West Mountain Road. Unfortunately, he landed near where Camp Hamlin was, and Camp Hamlin was owned by the Notre Dame Church in Adams, and it was also the Troop 38 used to hang out there. And he came across, these Boy Scouts came out and rescued him. And the man was from France. And he came down, and all these kids were French Canadians, and so they could speak French with him. So he didn't feel like he was in a foreign land. And they helped him gather up his balloon, and then he stayed there for a few days in Adams, and then packaged up put his balloon on a train and left. But
isn't that cheating, getting to Boston by rail?
he lost the race. I'm trying to think if he did, if he got the farthest or something like that. I think he did at some accomplishment, but he did not win. I don't think anybody got to their destination in that race.
Oh, what a pity. Well, we are getting near the end. We have about 3 minutes remaining. I want to tell you about the 2 other stories that I have in here.
Yes.
Well, I actually have a bunch of them here. I have my first novel, Faith, and I have my second novel, which is unfinished, Donor. That's in here.
And these are on your website too, right?
Yes, these are all on my website.
And your website is?
www.paulwmarino.org.
You didn't have enough W's, you had to add one?
Well, that one W was given to me by my parents, but it came from my grandfather.
Oh.
My grandfather was William Thomas Bennett. And William is my middle name because of him.
Oh.
My first name came from the saint.
St. Paul.
Yes. I wish they'd chosen a different saint, but...
Ignatius. Bartholomew.
Yeah, Bartholomew wasn't bad.
They could call you Bart for sure.
Yeah.
My middle name is Francis.
Saint Francis said of Brother Juniper. Oh yeah, I was thinking of Brother Juniper. He wished he had a whole forest of such junipers.
Oh. You can make gin from the juniper.
Yeah. Well, at any rate, between this show and the next one, which will be the first one in February, take a look at In Between and Twins.
For your store and your website for your stories.
Yes.
Okay.
Go to the fiction page, and they are the last 2 in there.
And I'll be back with pictures for the Factories and Atoms. I was supposed to bring them this week, but I left the disc at the shop.
Oh, horrors.
Exactly. But I vow it will be here next month.
All right, well, we have 30 seconds to go. So, thank you for being here,
Thank you
my
for
old
having
chum.
me.
Joanne, thank you for directing. Paul, thank you for being here. Oh, you betcha, Paul. Ugh. And thank the 2 of you for watching too. And we will see you in a couple more weeks here on Porch Talk.